with his red fingers and a torn woolen glove. A homeless man waved at me from my office steps above. It was Christmas Eve. I reached into my pocket for a fin, but he smiled and said, "Oh, no, not tonight, sir. Tonight I don't need any money, but could you spare me a minute or two?" While I searched for an excuse, he smiled. With a nod, I agreed. Besides, I was already late for the Christmas party, which I always dreaded each year. And then he launched a barrage of questions. If Jesus walked the earth tonight, where would he go? He whispered, "Do you know?" Oh boy, how do they find me? I thought to myself, as he continued eagerly. "Would you find him in a church or a temple?" he asked. I shrugged my shoulders and replied, "An interesting question, but how would I know?" He stared and then went on while scratching his head, knowing I was humoring him at best. Nevertheless, I listened and my interest grew. If Jesus walked the earth tonight, where would he go? Dressed in old clothes, a Hebrew shawl, a pair of worn sandals? Who would give him shelter? Who would shelter him from the cold and snow? Without coin or credit, where would he dwell? What would he eat? If he stopped at the temple across the street, would they not send him away? If he stopped at that house with the reindeer and sleigh, would they invite him in to warm his feet? Or would they report to the vagabond Jew? If Jesus came to this town, would he worship in the Church of Christ or St. Mary's around the block? Would he sit and listen to the Mass in Latin? Where do you think he'd go on Christmas Eve? The homeless man paused and rubbed his chin. Did he really want an answer from me? I was curious, and so I replied, "Why do you ask?" Well, tonight I saw a man walking in the snow, wearing sandals and a Hebrew shawl. He stopped at that temple and they sent him away. He wandered into both churches, but didn't stay. At that house with the reindeer and sleigh, the police came along and told him, "Move along, go back where you belong." I followed him past that old inn they call Motel Bethlehem, where that neon sign flashes off and on, and at the bridge he stepped up his pace. A jumper dressed in a fancy suit was ready to take the final plunge. The young man in robes stared silently as tears flowed down his cheek. The jumper then crawled down from the wall and began sobbing on his shawl. I hadn't heard even a single word, but undoubtedly something powerful had occurred. Down an alley he led the way. On a darkened doorway step I saw old Mac, the crippled vet, strung out on smack and always in debt. From the dumpster the stranger pulled out a bucket. Into it old Mac barfed several times. With this stranger sitting by his side, Mac wiped his face dry and surrendered with a sigh. "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." He bellowed to the heavens high, and then together they laughed, while I began to cry tears of joy. From that darkened doorway across town we went to Court Street, 1 block down, where Mandy, the aging hooker, was still waiting to turn a trick. Standing in the snow with his sandals, he took her hand and gave her an old and tattered book. Opening the stained and faded cover, she looked up with disgust and barked, "There's no goddamn money and the pages are blank. What is this, some kind of prank?" Softly he answered, "Yes, the pages are yours to fill. Have you not become like this aging book, with a worn-out cover, which no one will buy? Mandy raised her middle finger and began to curse. You can shove this. Before she could finish her words, she noticed a teardrop fall from the corner of his eye. I'm sorry. Immediately she apologized. But its pages are empty. What kind of book is this? The young man spoke again. You now have your story to tell. Write it on these empty pages. Trust what I say. This is so weird, she confided. I always wanted to write, but then, you know, things didn't go. She bowed her head, and with her sleeve she patted her runny nose. I bowed mine too, for some unknown reason. When I looked up, he was gone. Into the silent night he just disappeared. Mandy looked at her book. From inside the pages she pulled out a note, which she read to me. Help someone in dire need, and you will find the divine power of love, even on the coldest Christmas Eve.